To order the Garrison Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. We will begin with our roll call. Dusty?
Jocelyn Epicello.
Here.
David Gelber.
Here.
James Hope.
On his way.
Madeline Julian.
Excused.
Courtney McCarthy.
Here.
Matthew Spicer.
Here.
Sarah Tormey.
Here. Thank you. Now I'll invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we move on to accept agenda changes. Do I have changes from the members? I have one change that I would like to propose. We have a second reading and approval of policy 7580, equity, diversity, inclusion, that I wish to table until the May 19th meeting. We had a member who wanted to be here for the discussion and asked that we wait. Is anyone okay with that? Dusty, how do I?
We can make a motion to table it.
Okay. All right. Motion to table.
So moved.
The policy? Okay.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Sorry, I went to unmute myself. Aye.
This is all going too fast for me.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That will be our new format going forward because we are not Zoom boxes tonight. All right. Thank you all for that.
People are dressed from the waist down, and it's kind of amazing.
I know. I put on shoes for this meeting. Okay. Do I need to do the accept agenda after that, or we just?
I think we're good.
We're good? All right. Thank you, Dusty.
I'll note that as part of it.
All right, next we're going to move on to President's Remarks. I'm going to start with a welcome back to in-person meetings. It will now again sound like I'm leading a pep rally in the gym. I'm going to begin with a reminder to everyone to vote on May 18th for, we have our budget under consideration, and 4 Board of Education seats, 3 one-year terms and 1 one-year term. And that's all I have for this evening. I'm going to turn it over to Carl.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome back to everyone in person. It's great to be live. Few remarks. The first one is just some statistics. Positive news with COVID. Our positivity rate in Putnam County has dropped to 1.7%. That is as low as it's been in at least 8 months, and that is a real positive change for us. It's moving in the right direction. Also, we learned from Putnam County that 37% of our residents are fully vaccinated. 50% of Putnam County residents who are eligible have received their first dose. So that is also promising statistics that we're getting from the county. Just a reminder, Nurse Melissa has plenty of rapid antigen tests. So parents, if you at any time would like your child tested for COVID, it's a very gentle test. Nurse Melissa does it really well, and the children really seem to have no problem with it. And if the results are at 15 minutes, so if you have some time any morning, just give her a phone call, shoot her an email, and she will schedule you for an appointment. Also, just a reminder, we finished our ELA state exams, but math is coming up. Tomorrow we have grades 3 through 5 math exam. If children can't make it, there is a makeup date. And then next week, the middle school on May 11th will sit for the mathematics exam. Also, I just want to brief the board and the community that because we adopted our budget at our previous meeting with 2 new positions that we're very excited about. I went ahead and posted those positions on OLAS, which is our main job search website. They are the environmental educator, teacher, and science teacher, and our director of technology and instructional support. So there are two exciting positions that I really think will help the district move forward and work towards those goals that we've been talking about with the coherence plan. We've also done outreach to all of our consultants. We've done outreach to local colleges and universities. So it's widely advertised. The staff has been notified, and we encourage people to, if you know a candidate, please encourage them to apply. We're very excited about these positions. The interview process will take place later in May, the third, fourth week of May, and it will be a very thorough process with committees. There will be demonstration lessons. There will be careful vetting of all the candidates, and hopefully we will have a recommendation before the board by June. Lastly, modified sports has begun. We're very excited. You may have seen our student athletes outside practicing across the street. We have 2 home games next week coming up for anyone who's interested. There is on Thursday the 13th, we're playing Peekskill at 4:15 at our field. And then on Friday, we'll play at home again against Henrik Hudson, and that's girls softball. So we welcome you. Of course, you have to social distance. Families can be together, but we look forward to those sporting events. That's all for now, Sarah.
Thank you, Carl. Next up, we have board recognition. Every year in May, school districts celebrate the recognition of National School Principal Day, National Teacher Appreciation Week, and National School Nurse Day. The Board of Education would like to take this moment to convey their appreciation for not only school principals, school nurses, teachers, and all school staff across New York State, but all across our nation. This has been a year like none other in our history when it comes to providing education for our children. We especially want to commend and give special recognition to our Garrison School Principal, Ms. Allison Amig, the teaching staff at the Garrison Union Free School District, and all of our Guff School staff for the exemplary work done on behalf of not only our students, but on behalf of each other. We thank you all. And before I open this up to comment from the board, as I'm sure you all wish to share your thanks, we do have a special resolution prepared to thank our school nurse in recognition of School Nurse Day. And I've invited our Vice President Courtney to read this for the board. Oh, okay. We're going to wait for Nurse Melissa to call in real quick. Don't forget to thank your teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week.
Hi there. I'm good. How are you? We're going to have our Vice President, Courtney McCarthy, read the resolution on your behalf. Okay? I'm going to put you on speaker. Hang on.
Whereas Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 has been deemed National School Nurse Day. And whereas the Garrison Union Free School District employs Ms. Melissa DeFonce, hereinafter known as Nurse Melissa, as its school nurse. And whereas Nurse Melissa is highly regarded, loved, and respected by the parents, staff, and students of the Garrison Union Free School District. And whereas Nurse Melissa affectionately greets students and staff into the building of the Garrison School each day. And whereas Nurse Melissa has conducted hundreds of phone calls as part of the contact tracing efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic for more than a year. And whereas Nurse Melissa has participated in those contact tracing efforts, often during evenings, weekends, holidays, and scheduled days off for the benefit and support of the students, parents, and staff of the Garrison Union Free School District. And whereas Nurse Melissa has dedicated her time to teaching and reminding all members of the Garrison School community about proper hand washing, personal hygiene, and physical distancing measures for the safety of all. And whereas Nurse Melissa personally takes to heart the pressure and emotional toll the COVID-19 pandemic has placed upon all in our Garrison community. And whereas Nurse Melissa participates in meeting new parents during orientations and warmly reassures them that their children are loved, safe, and cared for in the Garrison School. And whereas, though not part of her required duties, Nurse Melissa often reaches out to a staff member, student, or parent who is recovering from surgery or illness just to see how they were doing and offer a warm get well. And now therefore be it resolved that the Garrison Union Free School District Board of Education, along with all members of the Garrison Union Free School District community, hereby extends its deepest gratitude and thanks in recognition of Nurse Melissa DeFonce and in honor of National School Nurse Day to commence on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021.
That is lovely, Mrs. McCarthy. Thank you very much.
It's from all of us, but I'm so glad you were able to hear.
Thank you, thank you. You're
And now I do wanted to extend an opportunity for the board to recognize our principal, our teachers, and our school nurse, should anyone have any comments they wish to add to the resolution this time.
Who wants to come?
Of all the years, this is a year to recognize all of their efforts, and I know that, I mean, you can all just say ditto, but we thank them so much. I know that the public and the parents and the community thanks them, so I'm glad that we have this opportunity to say it and share it.
Nurse Melissa is definitely so deserving of the resolution that Courtney just read, but I actually think that every single teacher in the school deserves that kind of a resolution. I hope that our teachers know how much they are regarded and respected in this community. This is Teacher Appreciation Week. I hope we've made it clear enough as a community, parents, kids, everyone, just what a valuable, what a tremendous faculty we have here, and how grateful we are to them for what they've done this year.
Thank you, David.
I'd like to say ditto, but I want to say I appreciate Matt for being a teacher, and I appreciate Jocelyn, and some days I appreciate myself. But today isn't one of those days. But the field of education has been devalued and under assault for 40 years, and I think this particular pandemic has brought to bear the importance of public education, the importance of education in the lives of people. And I hope that we don't just forget about it, that we restore the dignity that goes along with the profession. And I think that's a really important aspect of this appreciation. We can provide baked goods, but I really think that every teacher wants to be treated as a professional, and every teacher wants to earn the title of the profession. And I think that's it's important that we hold high standards. It's important that we respect those standards by respecting the individuals that hold those positions. So.
Mm-hmm. Hear, hear.
Yeah, so ditto all that in the interest of finding a new angle, just so not to repeat too much. But I think everything we're saying during the pandemic was definitely true a year and a half ago before the pandemic. I hope we said it then as well. It will be true after the pandemic as well. So I think the pandemic, as with so much in society, has crystallized and accentuated what is already the case. And in this context, it's accentuated things that are good, which is what's great about the school, which is our teachers. And they were doing all this work, and Nurse Melissa was an amazing nurse before this global catastrophe hit. She'll continue to be an amazing one when this is over.
Thank you all. Ready to move on, or do you have any? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to our public hearing on the board-adopted budget. At this time, I will open the public hearing on the board-adopted 2021-2022 school budget. There will be a brief presentation by our superintendent, Mr. Albano, and our school business administrator, Mr. Jimmick. Following the presentation, I will open the floor for comments and questions from the public and from members of the board. I now turn this over to Carl and Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I will just say, for anyone in our audience, there is a line-by-line budget on the table. They're hard copies if you care to take one and read it. It's also posted on our district website. At this time, the school budget for next year has been adopted by our Board of Education. It goes out for a public vote, as you know, on May 18th. This is a required hearing to review the financials one more time before the public vote. Every district in New York State is doing this. I'm going to fast forward over some of the narrative portion of the presentation because we have presented that now, I believe, at least 3 times. And if you care to watch it, all our meetings are recorded. You can access them through the website. And each slide presentation is there as well. So Dusty is going to help us out. I'm going to ask her to fast forward to the financial portion, and we'll turn it over to our business official, Joe Jimick.
Thank you. You can go on to the next.
Excuse me, before you start, I don't know your name yet. Just step back and touch it.
Thank you, James.
One more?
One more?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So as Carl mentioned, we have presented this budget a number of times. There's been some slight adjustments as we got more information from New York State about our state aid position. But here is a summary of the expenditure budget. You can see we have a budget-to-budget increase of 2.83%, and the increases in the 5 major areas that are shown there. We have some expenses that are related to the pandemic that we are continuing for the following year. But as Carl said, we have reviewed this a number of times, so we're not going to go into great detail at this moment. The total budget is $11,692,487. One of the requirements of this hearing is to present the budget in 3 components. The 3 components are the program component, which includes all the instruction, includes transportation, it includes the salaries and benefits for those components. The capital component, which includes the maintenance, operation maintenance of the buildings, as well as the debt service to manage that expense. And then the administration, which is the administration of the district, which includes the superintendent's office, the district clerk, includes the Board of Education, the finance office, includes legal, and includes the budget vote. All those things are in the administrative component. As you can see, and as we would expect, the largest component is the program component at $9 million. If the district has a budget vote and the budget vote fails, the district can choose to recommend another budget for the public to vote, or do a contingent budget. If the vote fails twice, you have to adopt the contingent budget. Based upon our analysis, the contingent budget would be $11,526,841, which would be a 1.38% increase year over year. If we have to do a contingent budget, there are some equipment purchases that are eliminated. The only equipment that we're allowed to purchase are ones to basically preserve the safety of the staff and the safety of the staff, as well as special education. There would be a reduction of staff that would be required under the contingent budget, and it would be likely that we would require more fund balance to be used in order to enact the contingent budget. So we have seen a lot of news in the past few weeks and month about large state aid increases, and this being the biggest amount of increases in a long time. This district, one of the components of state aid is foundation aid. It was held to the minimum of 3% increase. It's considered a rural district of low need, and that was the minimum increase, and that's what was held for foundation aid. We do have aid increases included as a part of the budget, but they are primarily a result of reimbursement in expenses, expense-based aid, like BOCES aid. And we incurred a lot of expenses due to remote learning and the iTutor program, and the reimbursement that you get from BOCES aid is typically done in the year following the expense, and that's why we're going to expect an increase in BOCES aid for next year. The majority of aid increase that we see is due to federal stimulus funds, which are grants and aid. They're not included as a part of this budget presentation. They are totally separate. If we want to go to the next slide. There's two components. Now, these amounts have been updated as of the last day or so to a slightly different amount than what's shown there, but it's around $100,000 for ESSER, which is basically a continuation of the stimulus funds from last year, and the American Rescue Plan, which is a new program that's either 3 or 4 years, depending upon whether it's the state's determination or the federal determination of the grant. So these are not included in the general fund, and the general categories that we're supposed to use these funds for is pandemic-related needs, learning loss, and non-recurrent expenses. This is a stream of income that districts cannot expect to continue year over year. So we will be developing plans that will use it in a way that respects that. So it's going to require a grant application process that's not complete yet from New York State. And this will require stakeholder input, and then we will need to post it on the district's website by July 1. If we take a look at the revenue budget, we are using $893,000 of fund balance to support next year's budget. There's a slight decrease of what was budgeted for the current year. And you can see the other categories that are shown there. The increase in state aid of 10.7% is primarily due to the BOCES reimbursement. If you look at the actual aid runs for the district, there's only around 17,000 of an increase year over year. Next slide. The tax cap calculation is shown there. There's only exclusions based upon the district's contribution for the capital component. So that is the amount that we spend towards debt service that is not covered by state aid. And that's really the main component of the increase that you see is the increase that is due to the increase in debt service for the capital project that is just about to commence. And the maximum allowable increase is 2.46%, and we are at that cap. And if you take a look at the increase year over year, 2.46%, and we're right in line with the average of 2.2% for the past 5 years. This is what we would project the amount per thousand to be in the two towns that are part of the district. As you know, the Phillipstown is not a 100% equalization rate. It's only 44% of the value. So that's why there's such a difference in rates between the two. That's where you project the average per thousand to be, but that will depend upon the assessments that are not completed that will be rolled up into the levy in August. And we want to remind everyone to come out and vote between 7 and 9 here in the gym.
Thank you, Joe. Do you have anything you wish to add, or should I go ahead and open this up for comment at this time?
I think we should open it up.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to open up the hearing for public comment, specifically on the budget hearing. I will remind the public that public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 3220 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel and individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. Okay. May I ask if we have a microphone available for public comment this evening? We can grab that one? Okay. So if anyone wishes to ask a question or voice a comment on the budget, I invite you to come up now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Barta. I hope this is the appropriate section to present this concern. If it is, I apologize, and I'll certainly wait to the end, but I think it is. So I have 2 children attending Garrison. One of my children is on the spectrum, requires a one-to-one aide as per his IEP.
I have to ask you, we can't talk about specific children, please.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. We've experienced, now the new budget, I think, if I'm understanding correctly, there's a proposal for aides to be cut for next year, a certain number of aides to be cut for next year. We've experienced firsthand the consequences of understaffing aide positions. There are periods of time, sometimes for a week at a time, where there was not a consistent aide provided due to understaffing. Teacher aides support our children. The teachers and the school as a whole, they are the extra eyes, ears, and voices that help support and guide our children in the classroom, on the playground, and in the lunchroom and other areas. While it is true Garrison teachers are exemplary in their commitment to our students, research shows teacher assistants are a cost-effective means of raising student achievement, especially in reading. I'm here today to voice my concern as a parent and a community member and request the board address a circumstance that has the potential to create a class of student that may not receive fair and appropriate public education guaranteed by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. I just have 3 questions, if the board can share. How many aides are currently assigned for next year? How many aides are projected to be needed for CSE mandated services provision next year? And what measures are going to be or have been taken to ensure that there will be enough aides to meet the school's obligation for next year?
Thank you, Mr. Barta. I'm going to ask our superintendent for a response now.
Sure, pleasure.
I just have a question. Are we allowed to respond in public to public comment? I feel like that's always been, I don't want to cut you off, Carl. I just want to make sure it's allowed.
Yes, for
Okay,
the
great.
hearing, we will be offering a response. We will not be entering into a debate, but we will be offering a response on the budget questions.
So just to clarify and give a little background on the topic of the reduction of the aide positions. Currently, the district employs 8 teacher aides. Next year, in this current budget that was adopted and is proposed, for a public vote on May 18th, there are 5 aides total. We have 1 aide in kindergarten, a classroom aide, 1 aide in 1st grade, and 1 aide in 2nd grade. That is pretty consistent with elementary schools throughout New York State, probably throughout the nation. Those primary grades is where a paraprofessional is very important to the overall facilitation of the class. The 2 additional aides right now we're projecting that they'll be needed for special education services, which you did mention. The best we can do during a budget process is make projections based on the current information that we have. So I assure the public and of course the board that there has been an in-depth analysis done of the needs of our special education department as well as our classrooms, our gen ed classrooms. And at this point, we believe that there will be 3 aides needed for gen ed classrooms, the ones K1, 2, and that 2 will be needed for special education. Now, the assurances you have that if a child, let's say, came to the district next year, a child new to the district, if that child had an IEP that required aide support, we would add an aide. Just because this budget right now shows 5 aides projected for next year, if it is on an IEP, we are required by law to honor that. So I want to give assurances, but it's not just my personal assurance. Under state ed law, any parent of a special needs child can really be comfortable knowing that as we go through a CSE process, the Committee on Special Education, If the determination is made that a child needs an aide, that child will have an aide. So I hope that answers. I know you had a few parts to your question.
Well, if there's, I guess that's the piece, if there's only projecting 2 aides, that will be necessary in September for the special
In the special education department, that's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I have any other comments from the public regarding the budget as presented? Okay. Do I have comments or questions from the board at this time on the budget as presented? I know you've seen this a number of times.
I don't have questions about the budget, but I have questions about the grants that will be like due July 1st. Is this not the time to talk about it? Because it's not really about the budget, right? Because it's not part of the budget, you know?
I don't know, Joe, do you have a lot more information from state
Well,
yet?
I wanted to ask Joe first. Do they define, first of all, who stakeholders are? Like, how involved is the input going to have to be? And then secondly, is it like the business office having to write these grants? What's the kind of feeling? Is this going to be onerous? Is this going to be easy? I'm curious about what you've heard.
Yes, we don't have a feeling that this is going to be a very complicated grant process. This is going to be similar to the requirements that would be for Title I, that you have to have representative membership from the school community, the different areas that are part of the meetings that take place. But it is going to be a process that goes through the business portal where we enter grants, submit a paper, hard copy application, and then we will have to have a location on our website where those grants are shown. So I don't believe it is going to be that complicated, but we don't have the process yet to be able to tell you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have other comments from the board or questions at this time? Okay. Then as a reminder, the school budget vote and election of board members is scheduled for Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the Garrison School Gymnasium. COVID-19 safety protocols will be in effect during the vote. At this time, this concludes the public hearing for the 2021-2022 school budget. Thank you very much. Okay. At this time, we now move on to board discussion item electric vehicle charging stations and transportation. Before I turn this over to Carl and Joe, I will say this is an initial conversation. Joe is going to share, and Carl will share some of their beginning research. Then we'll have a time for the board to ask some questions, have some discussion. Please keep in mind that the charging stations and electric vehicles are not in the budget as presented for next year, but it's a good time to get this conversation started so that we are prepared again for years to come. All right, Carl and Joe.
Sure. Well, I'll just begin by saying our facilities committee recently had a discussion about electric charging stations for vehicles and also electric vehicles, particularly bus transportation. Matt Spicer is our chair of that committee. Of course, David Gelber sits on the committee, as well as Madeline Julian, Joe Jimick and I, and Mike Twardy, and parent reps as well. I thought we had a really positive initial discussion, but we needed to do more research. So there were some proposals, some suggestions that came up. Of course, this is an area that we are all highly interested in, but we needed to learn more about the feasibility of moving toward in this direction. So Joe Jimick, in addition to putting together this budget for us, in his spare time has been doing some research, and this evening he has, I think, some good information, at least, as you said, Sarah, to begin a discussion about this important topic. So, Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carl. So we have done some research based upon two items. One is vehicles, and the other one is charging stations. So charging stations, I think that we have some very good news to talk about there's two incentives that the district is able to access. One is EV Make Ready New York, and the other is Charge Ready New York. So the charging stations are eligible for an incentive through NYSERDA, and the infrastructure, so the wiring in the ground, the electric service, the panels, the disconnects, that is eligible for incentives through the utilities, through a program called EV Make Ready. If we are able to have public charging stations, so basically charging stations that are accessible to the public, which we would have to determine how exactly that would work and how it would be arranged. If we had these in our parking lots, we could be eligible to be reimbursed for up to 90% of the expense that it would take for us to install the infrastructure from the where it comes off from the utility to the actual charging station. And then through NYSERDA, the incentive is up to $4,000 per charging plug. So we are in the process of doing a capital project where we are going to be upgrading the electric service. So we are going to be taking a look at how that might work in conjunction with our capital project. It's not going to be part of the capital project, but it might be able to be done at or near the same time, which will allow some even lowering of expenses. We did have some conversations with ChargePoint, which is a supplier of both the charging stations as well as the EDI interface that's required to run a charging station. So ChargePoint is a manufacturer of the devices as well as running the pay application. So essentially, their basic business model is they take 10% of what the sales of the power that goes through the system, and then that goes to ChargePoint to cover their expenses as well as whatever card fees that the card issuers have, and the balance of that then comes to the district. So this would allow us to allow charging stations to take place and not have it be a gift of public funds. So it would allow for the employees as well as potentially public to use the charging stations. So we have some discussions with ChargePoint, and then we also have some scheduling of some visits of installers of this equipment to see what kind of quotations that would be net the incentive. So that, I think, is good news for the district, and we are moving forward with that. As with vehicles, we also did some research and some outreach to our current contractor, which is Orange County Transportation, and we do have some additional development and research that needs to take place if the district was going to purchase or lease vehicles. It is something that they would have to propose to the public and include that as a part of a vote. So that would be at a budget vote is when you would do that. We're not at the point where we are ready to recommend a leasing of vehicles at this point, and we did get some preliminary information from the existing provider that we have, and it isn't currently economically viable with the system that we have at the moment. But that doesn't mean it's going to be that way in the future, and it is something that we're going to continue to research as it goes along.
Thanks, Joe. So what I'd like to do now is open it up for board members to ask questions, and understanding that we may not have or Joe certainly may not have all the answers today, but perhaps we can then add these questions in for further research. So anyone have any questions on both electric vehicles and the charging stations?
Yeah, I have a
James?
question. one is, supportive of both initiatives. I guess the question is how to get to electric buses, right? Is there any legislation in Albany that would compel bus services to provide electric vehicles or transition to electric vehicles that you know about, or that anyone knows about?
There's none currently that I know about for the large buses, but that doesn't mean that there won't be. I imagine there will. I think the first step for the district may be actually in the smaller vehicles, maybe the vans, but that would also depend upon the age of the existing equipment and when they were beyond their useful life.
I guess one thing we could think about is sort of mapping the demographic expectations of this community, of the school district, right? And weighing, doing a cost-benefit analysis, I suppose, or a comparative analysis between the cost of renting school buses, right? And do we currently hire the drivers, or do the drivers come with the company?
They're through the company currently.
Right. So versus being more, seeking a more independent solution. And what I mean by that is when we rent a bus based upon its size as well as the number of runs, correct? Will we demographically reach a point where we won't need full-size buses to meet a subset of runs? Are there runs we do with 10, 12 kids on it that we could do with a smaller vehicle that could be an electric vehicle? This is a question, it would be more of a transportation analysis based upon the demographics of the school district.
James, just a quick response to that is this year, our percentage of students on buses is reduced as compared to previous years.
Sure.
As you know, and our parents have been very good about transporting their children to help us with the social distancing on the bus. So we do have that data, and we can go back, but you are correct, there are some buses that have more students, and we have other large buses with a smaller number of students. So that is something that we certainly could take a closer look at, and potentially, I think the question is, could we do a route, 1, 2, or 3 routes with a smaller vehicle?
And that vehicle be purchased electric vehicle that we could, either use their driver or our own driver to. I'm thinking of the high school runs. Some private school runs where the demand isn't as great. And, so that's something to think about. Is make it a part of make EV vehicles and our transportation needs as part of the same conversation, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Joe, would you like to speak to the current status of our vans that the district owns?
So we have a number of vans that the district has, which have a significant amount of their life remaining. I'm not sure of the exact year, but they have at least 6 or 7 more years of life remaining. The large bus that we have has that amount of time, or potentially a little bit more, because it doesn't have a lot of miles on it. But those are, I would say, based upon the information that we have now, the smaller vehicles would have less of the range limitations and the servicing requirements, both from the infrastructure side as well as from the servicing of the unit side. Because we understand that there are some significant range restrictions of the large buses, the 66 passenger buses. They would basically present a challenge for if you wanted to do a morning run, an afternoon run, and like an activities run with that unit. That would be difficult in a day.
Matt?
First, I wanted to thank Crystal Ford for nudging the district in this direction and really getting us moving. I think there's credit to be paid there. But I also had a question about this aspect of the lot being public. First, do we have a sense of how many, like if it's I guess I'm not that familiar with charging stations, like how many actual charging components are there in a charging station parking lot? And also, if the district is obliged to make it public, do we have room to maneuver in terms of having rules for when teachers' spots could be prioritized? And then kind of related to that, it feels a little bit like it would be a gas station. Is there a way on a school property to sort of design it so that there's not going to be traffic in the area where students might be doing things like going to the garden or going out for recess, if there's going to be more cars than usual using it as a public facility?
I think these are all questions that would need to be developed as we look at the siting. And typically, the charge stations have 2 ports per unit, and we were potentially looking at 2 units, one in the upper lot and one in the lower lot. But that is all just preliminary, just kind of looking at it as far as feasibility and the numbers, and then coming back to the board and with our information as to what that represents. And as far as the policy and what we would be allowed to do as far as restrictions and still maintain the incentive, that's still yet to be determined.
Got it. Thank you for doing all this research.
Jocelyn?
Yes, the way you presented the stations makes it sound like it's almost a no-brainer. I think in particular with the grants that are coming out, where you have to spend on something that is a one-time cost, this could be a potential use. And if the district is able to raise revenue, no matter how small it might be, from these public ports, it seems very positive. And I appreciate all the research. I mean, all the incentives. This seems like a way to go, especially given the infrastructure that's going to be going on with the capital project. If they're willing, trying to tack that on in the next year, I don't know what it's going to take on our part. I know for you it's going to take a lot more research, but as the board is concerned, I don't know what else, I don't know what we get to do in order to push it or advocate for it, but I'm all for it. And regarding, sorry, go ahead. Do you want to comment?
Well, I would say what the board would need to do is give us direction as far as if this is something that we want to pursue, and then if it comes to the point where we were applying for grants, the board would accept the funds for those grants to be used for the purpose of implementing the station. So it is possible that we might be able to leverage the other work that's going on with utilities to, for example, put additional conduit in the hole type of a thing. So we're kind of looking at that, and we will be reviewing the plans of our electrical upgrades with any potential contractor that might be doing the charging stations.
That's great. And when you talked about it in the facilities committee, did the capital project team, are they part of the discussion on it? Like, did they seem like they were happy to look into it? Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've now a question on actually the transportation itself. I remember last year when we went over the transportation contracts, there were 3 bids and we had to go with the lowest responsible bid, of course. Is that not the case this year? Because, for example, you suggested we would need to have a public vote about something like this. So what if someone came to us with a transportation bid that included electric vehicles?
I think the difference is the bid versus the purchase, right?
So that's what you mean, more like so contracting with EV companies is different than purchasing them. So when we go out to bid this June or July, whenever it is again.
We weren't planning to go out to bid again. We have a multi-year contract.
It's not an annual thing.
No.
Oh, okay, because it's so much money that I was like, oh, do we get to go out to bid again? Sorry.
Well, we could, Jocelyn. Typically you don't go out to bid for transportation annually, but nothing prevents you. We could, and we could make a condition of the bid that we want electric vehicles, electric school buses. But Joe, and again, this is really some preliminary research, but in a conversation with our current transportation company, they have been looking at the cost of electric buses. And what he said, and this is not a firm quote, but he did indicate that our current annual expense could at least double, potentially even triple, if we wanted them to provide electric buses.
Okay.
So, that, and again, we have to take a closer look. And I think, Joe, we have to look at it from a number of different perspectives.
Right.
Another possibility is to bring transportation in-house. But that has to be a very thoughtful process that requires more staffing, maintenance, more infrastructure, because the charging stations for a bus are very different from the cars, of course.
And we would have the cost of charging those buses as well then. Right now, we're talking about passing the cost of charging the vehicle charging ports will be passed off to whoever's charging their car.
Yeah, I would say that the largest cost would be the infrastructure, and the vehicles themselves would be the largest component of the cost. The other difficulty with the large buses specifically is if they need service, where is the location of that service in relationship to Garrison, because these buses may only have 100 miles of range, and if it's got range problems to get to service, then maybe it's going to be towed every time it needs to be serviced. So there are challenges that are associated with that sort of thing.
Just so the board understands, the public, if we went to buy an electric bus, the public would have the right we'd have to seek approval from the public for that purchase. That's all.
And to lease it as well, yes. If you were going to do a lease that has multiple years, you would need the public approval for that.
Another possibility would be partnering with another district. That is, working with another district for busing services or shared services around busing if they had electric vehicle options. Okay.
Yeah, I think the only districts that are in the area is White Plains is the only one that I know of with electric.
They're using a very limited number, is that correct?
A handful, yes.
That's a big district.
It's a very large district.
Right. But, I mean, that's a possible model, but I also think that if you fixate on, 66 passenger buses, I don't think that's a necessary way to go. And I don't think that there might be a need perhaps there is a need for 2 of those runs to be a 66-person bus, but I'm not sure how many runs. Every run doesn't have to be done by that kind of bus, I don't think. I think if we went with smaller vehicles, we might be able to pull it off. Anyway.
Do I have other questions from the board regarding the charging stations or electric vehicles?
One other question. Sorry. Codes. Codes on these things. That is to say, school buses are highly regulated entities. I know this, right? So is there any sense of code on an electric school bus? Is it that we have to be concerned about, or? No? Okay.
Okay.
Not yet, anyway, right? Not that we know. Not yet.
As Joe mentioned, in bringing the conversation to a close, I have a sense that we have consensus to move forward on the electrical vehicle charging ports and have Carl and Joe to continue to explore this and bring back to us whatever the findings they have and perhaps agreements as we move forward with this. And hopefully we can do that through the facilities committee as well. Is that correct assumption? I'm looking around at everybody. All right. Then there's
one additional suggestion on that. As I listen to this conversation about how we go about electrifying our vehicles, I would think this would be a tremendous interest to 7th and 8th graders who could really get involved in the kind of questions and choices that we're making. and have some kind of consultative role and let's get their opinion, see what they think. We don't, have to be abide by that, but it just feels like a great learning opportunity for kids to know that this kind of conversation is going on, and that they can be part of it.
David, you are 100% correct. As we pursue these initiatives involving students, particularly middle school students, I think would be an amazing learning opportunity for them, and we probably would learn a thing or two from our students, because their insight is incredibly valuable. So we definitely plan to do that as we move forward next year. Involving students, I think, is a definite.
Okay. With that, you have the directive to move forward and keep exploring this. Thank you for the research you've done so far during this very busy season. Okay. At this point, I'm going to move on to acceptance of minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the regular meeting of April 20th, 2021, and the minutes of the special meeting of April 28th, 2021, as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved. Seconded.
Thank you. Carl, do you have any comment on the consent agenda as presented?
Just on one item, letter C, I just want to congratulate Barbara D'Alessio, who is retiring, and that is the motion before you to accept her resignation for the purpose of retirement. Barbara has given the district many years of service. We appreciate that. As we said earlier, this year has been a particularly difficult year, and Barbara has been with us every day, helping us with safety protocol, looking after our children, keeping them safe. So we appreciate all her many years of service and wish her well in retirement.
Thank you. Do I have questions from the board regarding the consent agenda at this time? Okay. Then at this point, I will go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on. We do not have old business before us. We do have new business. CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, recommendations and student placements 17208, 17404, 17419, 17458, 17343. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Did you vote him?
No, not yet. Aye.
Okay.
Can I have a question on that item? The CSE, CPSE recommendations? Is there room for a question?
Yes.
Sure.
How, to what extent do we reach out to members of the community, residents with children who are in preschool age regarding their special education opportunities that the district and the county provide? How do we do that, and how often do we do that?
James, we have a list of preschools. I don't know exactly how many, but I want to say there are at least 8 or 10 preschools that our students have come from over the years. So we reach out to each and every one with registration for gen ed students, but also to try to determine if there are students with special needs. And then the Committee on Preschool Education convenes, of course, and there is a very in-depth process of going out to observe children, studying all the evaluations that have been done, and then talking about a transition plan from the preschool to our kindergarten program. So there is a thoughtful process in place to make sure there is a smooth transition from pre-K to Garrison when it comes to children with special needs.
Does the county have any burden in this, informing residents of these opportunities? Does the Department of Health or,
That is a good question. The county provides the services up until kindergarten, and then we assume responsibility for the services. But we are still in charge of chairing that process.
Right.
So the services come from the county. What level of information the families get from the county, I would have to get back to you on,
Okay.
but I could certainly look into it.
All right. And do we have, do we work with pediatricians or any person that would be possibly involved in children's health in this way?
Well, pediatricians are in many cases.
My point is that not every preschooler is in a preschool, right? Not every child is attending preschool.
That is true.
Especially during these circumstances. So I'm wondering about how are we capturing those kids?
Good question. Yeah, the pediatricians.
It's really, just to be full transparency, I just don't know, so I'm curious.
Sure. Pediatricians usually make recommendations. In some cases, they are sitting at the table with the CSE, but usually they'll make a written recommendation to us that we will take under consideration and honor if there's a medical need, for example. That is pretty frequent, but we don't proactively reach out to the pediatricians to find out if there are students who maybe are still at home. It is the parents' responsibility to inform us. We advertise registration. Again, we do the outreach to all the various preschools, but if a child is home, I don't know of another avenue to find out other than the parent informing us.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Are we set with the vote on that, Dusty? Do you want to proceed, or do you want me to go back?
Yes.
I think the next part of your question, Sarah, you didn't get a chance to ask if there were any opposed.
Yep, okay.
Sorry.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have moved B. C, request for approval to access retired technology equipment. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves retirement of technology equipment as described in the inventory list presented to the board. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the excess retired technology equipment from the board?
I just wonder, I saw the list, and what gets done with it? Is any of it usable and donated, or is it all scrap, electronic, et cetera?
Yeah, there's a number of different items on that list, Jocelyn, and it's been analyzed by Edutech, our computer company, as well as Scott Kaufman, our interim technology director. And everything on that list has been determined to be end of life. Chromebook, for example, typically you'll get maybe 5 or 6 years. I think some of these Chromebooks may be even older. Some of the iPads, I think, may be approaching even 10 years or more. So we've determined that it's at the end of its useful life. So we are not donating it. Joe, I think there was this possibility of maybe having it picked up by an organization. Okay, can you speak to that a bit more?
So I believe the technology department has gotten quotations for the purchase of this as surplus. All of these devices have been wiped of their personally identifiable information, and they are clean. So there are organizations that buy this equipment for parts and things, and we get quotations from them, and the best number we accept, and then they take the devices and pay us for them. Yeah.
And
So
I'll add,
we're looking for some revenue from this.
Some, not like a tremendous amount of revenue, but it's better than paying to dispose of them, which is another thing that typically happens with equipment that's beyond its useful life.
yeah. And according to Scott Kaufman, I think the only value is really spare parts, that they're not going to, be utilized. And some of the equipment will be recycled, is what we have planned for it.
Do I have further questions regarding the technology equipment? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. We are now moving on to the public comment portion. Again, the policy 3220 of our district is in place, and I ask all to comply with the policy. Please state your name when you come up to the microphone. I'm not going to read it again at this point. But the board will be listening to comments, and at this point, we will not be engaging in a dialogue or responding.
I'm Crystal Ford. I feel like I want to sing Reunited because it feels so good. I missed you, missed all of you. Thank you, Joe, for doing all the research. And, you just really went above and beyond, so I'm very grateful. So I just wanted to point out about the electric charging station. You might be able to, because it's going to be networked and there's software, you may be able to put limitations so that only staff are allowed to actually charge during the day, and they have a sign posted like, it's only available off hours, off Garrison hours, and even like when a car is plugged in, and if you had an app, you would see that the station is occupied, and then you wouldn't go to charge. So I think there's options with the software so you can tweak it and make sure that people are not coming during school hours and would come at another time. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that, the electric school bus thing is like, it's new, but I feel very hopeful that maybe there will be more funding available to the school districts to help us with that transition. But I do think, that is long-term, I think that should be the goal, because there's just, the positives are like in the column right there. So it's just a matter of figuring out how to do it. Otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you're doing, and keep going. Is there a board appreciation day? Really?
October.
Every day.
Every day I'm not on the Garrison retired inventory list. I feel good.
Hello, everybody. Ned Rouch from the PTA here. Hello. I'll be very brief. I wanted to say that Crystal approached us some weeks ago to discuss electric buses. We told her we supported her cause, and we're glad to see you talk about it now or tonight. And we support any further investigation the board and this district can do on that matter. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Wick. It's good to see you guys. I just wanted to say that I appreciate you all. I'm up here to just express my concern about the termination of 3 aide positions. I know at this point, like, the budget's kind of set, but I'm not allowed to say anything about my child, but I think it's a little bit hasty to cut 3 aide positions from 8 to 5. I'm assuming there's going to be some kids that now will not be getting an aide next year. I can't imagine I'm the only one that has a child with additional support needs. And so I just wanted to, make my voice heard. Obviously, I appreciate the school, I appreciate all of you, but I just think that's quite a big cut. And unless you have a child that needs additional support, you cannot understand what it's like as a parent fighting to get what you need for your child. So thank you to you all, but just wanted to voice my concern about that, and I hope that you will think about that.
Thank you. Do I have further public comment for this evening? Okay. At this point, I'm going to move on to board member comment and other discussion. We started at the top of the list, right, Matt? All right, so I am up first, and I have no further comment this evening. Matt, you're up next.
Just nice to see everyone below the chin. That sounded oddly inappropriate. What I meant was, it's nice to be in person, is what I should have said.
It's a school, Matt. It's a school.
Thank you. Courtney?
I was going to say something similar that would also come out inappropriate about wearing pants. But it's really nice to be back in person. It feels like it's a long time. Crystal, I've missed you. Missed the public comment. It's just nice to be back behind the table for us all working together in a different way.
Thank you. James?
It's again, thank you. It's great to see you, Dusty. It's good to see you and everyone in the flesh. Again, inappropriate. It's good to be here and with everyone. I ran into former board member Derek Du Bois recently, and he just asked me, what's been going on at the board since he left, and
Did you say not much?
he said not much. We haven't been really doing anything. He just from his position of moving out of the district and seeing it from years, he's really happy with the work we are all doing and the developments at the school. So when you take the long look, and he was just sort of thrilled to hear about the amount of work that's been going on in the district, and I just wanted to pass that on. Sometimes we get lost in the day-to-day, and we don't see the big picture. And I think this is really it's a good moment to step back a little bit and see how much work's been going on the last couple of years, and take stock of that. It hasn't all been perfect, but we're moving in a very positive direction for the district. So I wanted to pass on his appreciation for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, James. You have further comment? We're good? All right. David, you're up next.
Yeah, well, I want to say that the downside of us being back here in person is that I've forgotten what it looks like when you guys smile. Point number one. And I just also want to say, and this has been said before, but it is very sincere that this has been such a tough year, and Carl has been such an awesome leader. And that's one of the things that really distinguishes this district is his leadership, and I'm just really very grateful for him.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go over to Jocelyn.
No comment.
Thank you. Okay. Unless there's further comment from the board at this time, I'm going to move on to a motion to enter into executive session subject to board approval. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law SRP Unit. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. This concludes the public portion. We will adjourn without taking further action. Thank you very much for coming out and joining us this evening.